All right, hey, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, we are back taking a look at the tropics. Tonight is Tuesday, September 28th, 2021. This is your daily tropical update. Across the Atlantic Basin this evening, we are still tracking Major Hurricane Sam, a Category 4 on the Saffir-Simpson scale, located in the central Atlantic. Hasn't moved a lot since we last talked. Sam's still kind of plodding along at about 8-9 miles per hour. That will pick up in the coming days as Sam begins to recurve to the northwest and eventually to the northeast, still confidently expected to miss the Caribbean islands and the eastern U.S. coastline. We're also tracking the remnants of Peter, this little swirl that's hard to pick out right here along the edge of a large cold front moving over the Atlantic Ocean. And then we also have this huge mess off the coast of Africa that's really two storms, or really two areas of interest, Invest 91 and Invest 90L, although you can clearly tell which one looks better from that presentation alone. We'll talk about all that in SAM. And we'll start with Sam this evening. And satellite presentation hasn't changed a whole lot. It's been a lot of this oscillation of these eye wall replacement cycles. The eye goes in, becomes cloudy, and then the eye pops back out. You can see here the eye, once again, is much bigger than it was earlier today, but Sam has had this habit of looking like it's finished an eye wall replacement cycle, and then it just starts another one. So it's been good for gathering data from the hurricane hunters and whatnot, but as far as elsewhere goes, it's not been very useful for maintaining a very strong hurricane. I mean, it still is a Category 4, but Sam did look a lot more impressive 2 days ago when it wasn't doing all this. Nonetheless, Sam's struggling a little bit. The mid-level environment moisture is very lacking, so it does have water temperatures and shear mostly on its side, but it's having a hard time with all that dry air in the vicinity of the storm really holding itself together. But more or less steady state. Again, hurricane hunters did find evidence that it's about a 130 mile an hour storm, your 128.5 knot flight level winds, your 150 knot SFMR winds, all that kind of converts out to about 130. So Hurricane Center keeping up with that. Again, 103 mile an hour winds, moving to the northwest at 9 miles an hour. Latest Hurricane Center forecast, no major changes. Sam is going to pass well north of all the Caribbean islands. It makes that more northeast turn towards the weekend, and now expected to miss Bermuda to the east enough where it looks like impacts are unlikely for Bermuda. They lie outside of the edge of that cone of uncertainty. You wouldn't completely rule it out at the 4 or 5 day window, but even if Sam took the more western edge of the forecast cone, it would only be kind of fringe impacts, and it's not an overly large storm anyway. So looks like Bermuda's in the clear. Could have some issues for Atlantic Canada down the road. Sam will still be a pretty strong hurricane by that point. Hurricane Center just forecasted to be a 105 mile an hour hurricane by Sunday, but it'll be a major hurricane up until that point. Water temperatures are going to still support a significant hurricane all the way up till past Bermuda. Bermuda right there. So it's got to really get past Bermuda before the water temperatures, fall off to the degree that the storm would actually begin to rapidly weaken. Some ensemble models from the GFS and the European model still do show a potential, for Sam to kind of turn back towards Newfoundland, becoming an extratropical cyclone. If that trough kind of pulling it away isn't strong enough, it may just kind of wind up merging with it somewhere over here. So folks in Eastern Canada, especially Newfoundland, want to keep an eye on the forecast. But right now, no other issues for the Eastern U.S. or Bermuda, so all's well there. Rest of the Hurricane Center's map this evening, the remnants of Peter down to a 30% chance. This has dropped off a good bit from earlier this morning when it was closer to like 60 or 70%. And just doesn't look like little old Peter out here is going to have enough time to get going. It's this little swirl right here. Not very impressive. But it sure tried. So we kind of turn our attention to this big blob down here off the coast of Africa. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on it because it's really far away, not a big point right now, but it's an interesting feature because you're talking about this big, broad area of low pressure with like two distinct rotation areas inside of it. Neither are surface based, neither are really organizable tropical cyclones yet, but the main feature is Invest 90L, this big wave here, or big rotation area. And then you have this like smaller one off here. So you have two different systems competing within this envelope, but they're really far south. So 10 degrees north is kind of your average line. Most of your storms form at, 8, 9, 10, 11, or 12 or so degrees, like kind of in this range right here, and they all move off to the west. So you've got this abnormally dipped area. It looks more like what you see in the Western Pacific before a big storm kind of pulls out of the monsoon troughs, what they call it. But, an interesting feature nonetheless. And if 90L say it develops here where these thunderstorms are tomorrow, you're talking about potentially one of the most furthest south and east storms on record that we have in the satellite era or even before. So interesting feature nonetheless. But the real question with this big blob is this: does this just become one big blob and move off to the north, or do we actually get two separate storms? So the GFS shows this pretty well. If we go back to tonight, you can see the big blob right now And what you have, okay, we went back too far. So this is Tuesday. You can see right now the GFS does show two storms. So 90L, the bigger one towards the back, this is going to pull north and follow Sam. Okay, Sam moves off, this moves off. It's a much stronger feature. It's going to have no problem moving northward and finding the edge of the ridge of high pressure over the western Atlantic or eastern Atlantic. So you can see here the GFS clearly shows that system following Sam out to sea. It's no problem. We're good. The issue is if this little lead feature is able to get away. If this either A is going to get absorbed into 90L and it's just going to be one big system moving away, or conversely, like the GFS shows tonight, this has got enough to break away and move off on its own. Now, this isn't super threatening to the U.S. in any kind of the short term because this is going to move across the Atlantic and it's very likely to fall back apart as it 90L moves away. Our other one, 91L, moves off to the west. A lot of dry air in the vicinity, and Sam is going to have some strong upper level winds outflowing from the storm, and this will cause enough wind shear to probably keep whatever comes away weak or just non-existent by name storm standards. But down the road, these sort of disturbances can kind of sneak off, and then little tropical wave moves into the Caribbean. Maybe it causes trouble down the road, maybe it doesn't. Right now, no indication of that, but that's the only really interesting thing. So we'll see if we get one or two named storms out of this. Again, the Hurricane Center treating them as separate entities for now, but the lead one does have less of a chance. They do mention the potential for this to potentially merge with it says if the disturbance does not get absorbed by the stronger low pressure system to its east, which is this one, that 90% chance. This is probably going to be a tropical depression by tomorrow evening, I would imagine. But it's going to take some time. Storms that far south take a while to spin up. It's hard. You don't have a lot of Coriolis effect down there. It takes a while to get things spinning up. So might be tomorrow night, maybe the day after, but later on this week, something is going to form down there. At least one named storm, if not two. That's the only thing we're tracking right now. The only other issue is the GFS has been pretty persistent about some kind of lowering pressure around the Central Caribbean and Cuba in a couple of days. So we go out to October 3rd, which is Sunday, and then go into Monday, Tuesday, and you can see some general, some kind of tropical something or other rotating down here, some kind of low pressure trying to form south of Florida. There's a big cold front coming in and big upper low, moving through the eastern U.S., and you might have something trying to form ahead of this big front. It's too early to really tell. The models are kind of all over the place. Whether if you go back to previous runs, they have more of the deal down here. You have a strong tropical wave potentially moving into Florida. There's a couple different solutions on the table right now, so that's something to keep an eye on as we go into the weekend. How that forecast looks in a couple days out. I wouldn't anticipate anything strong, but some kind of rainmaker, some kind of subtropical storm. There's some potential issues there down the road. So we'll watch that next week. I just want to remind everybody that we are just about done with the 21 seasons for naming the name list for 21. We only have Victor and Wanda left. I talked about this once or twice, but if, say, both of these systems currently on NHG's map, these two get named, they will be Victor and Wanda, and that will exhaust the 2021 hurricane season naming list, and we will rotate to an auxiliary or a secondary naming list, starting with Adria and then working our way back down from there. This is replacing the Greek alphabet that we used last year and in 2005 when we ran out of names, because last year it was really confusing. We had multiple storms make landfall, and iota, eta, theta, beta, data, zeta, whatever. Like it's almost impossible to remember which one was which. So we're just going to switch over to this secondary naming list. It's going to stay on the shelf, and any year we almost run out of names, we do run out of names, we'll have this ready to just start going down this list. And if one gets retired, I'm assuming they're going to treat it like a normal list, but just something to keep an eye on or think about. If we do get these two name storms and then say something does form in the Caribbean next week, it'll be Adria instead of Victor or Wanda, assuming the other two were named. So, bit of food for thought there. Anyway, that's what I got for you guys this evening. Sam going to move away. Peter's remnants move away. 90L moves away. 91L, not a problem anytime soon. So basically, the only thing we're really watching is this region as we go into next week, but it's not going to be a problem for the next several days. So until then, enjoy the break. Don't sleep on October in the tropics. And thanks for watching. Have a good one.